Yeah, so a lot of people, they'll go on the MLS and they'll just take a quick first glance at the properties out there and go, oh, none of these work, right? Because most people know how to do napkin math, right? Like you look at the potential income or the rents that somebody would pay market value rent on that property, and then what are the expenses, and they do the math, and like that doesn't really work. But what they're not doing is they're not asking themselves, how could this work, right? You got to be, I do believe in more challenging times, or in most markets, when I first started doing real estate, it was a grind. Like things weren't going up very quickly. It was like 1 or 2% appreciation a year.
Hey, fellow savvy real estate investors, thanks for tuning in. We are so excited to have Kory McKinnon on the show today. I am going to not introduce Kory because I think Kory is going to do a fantastic job of introducing all the different things he has done, his past, and he is a wealth of knowledge. For those of you who haven't seen him online, you should definitely check him out online. He does a lot of active education on Instagram, which is where I've been following him. So I feel like I already know Kory before he's even going to tell us more about himself today. But yeah, Kory, thank you for being on the show. Maybe you can tell our listeners a little bit about yourself in a nutshell, and really what led you down this path of real estate investing.
Awesome, guys. And no, thanks for having me on. I know this has been a while in the making, just trying to get this date to come together and that sort of thing. I know we got a lot of mutual friends, but really appreciate the time here today. Looking forward to pouring into your audience. So, I'm Kory. I'm from Sarnia, Ontario, and, former national level athlete, former corporate trainer. And now I've kind of taken those things into the real estate world since I retired from corporate 10 years ago. Now I speak about real estate. I teach about real estate. I'm not afraid to be on social media giving great sound bites out about real estate, which is interesting because a lot of this newer generation who are so into social media are actually some of the shyest people when it comes to actually sharing the message sometimes. So I'm not shy when it comes to that sort of thing. And I just want to be a bright light in the space because I really do believe that more people will not be able to be financially secure in whatever their retirement date might be. I saw my parents struggle a little bit financially, single income parents and 4 kids in the house. And I always saw that the entrepreneurs were different, right? Somebody who was self-employed, somebody who, had some sort of ties to real estate. Even the guy at would empty the coins from the video game machines back in the 80s or 90s. I knew that they were different. They were basically making their own plan, doing their own thing, having control of their time. And, I think as a society, we're more overworked than most countries. And, I just got back from Mexico where they really, they work to live. They don't live to work. Whereas sometimes I feel like in North America, we feel like we have to live to work just to kind of keep up with how expensive housing is and all sorts of different things. Luckily, prices are coming down a little bit right now, but interest rates are high. So there's always going to be something to deal with and overcome.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, thanks for the introduction. And, you've been a real estate investor for so many years, over a decade, and you've explored so many different strategies. Is there a certain one that you prefer now? Or are you just basically whatever an opportunity comes, you'll go for it?
Well, it's interesting, right? Yeah. So I've been investing for, I think this is my 18th year now. And even before I bought real estate, I was, I wanted to buy something 2 or 3 years earlier. I just had a bit of a scratch against my credit. So I didn't get the absolute best rate, and I was stubborn, and I was like, no, I'll sit in the penalty box and wait for my credit score to go up a little bit, and then we'll buy the house. So, I started off with house hacking. I house hacked a 6-plex. That was my first deal. And that was like, if you think of, I always use the analogy of if someone's going to go and enter a running race, instead of doing a 5K, I went for the full marathon right out of the gates. I guess I could have house hacked a big apartment building, but so I did it in a bigger building. It was harder to close. There was no resources back then in 2005 when I did that deal. But I think people need to be mindful of, don't always look at what other people are doing. Like most people go through the normal evolution of a real estate investor, which is a lot of people rent at first, unless they're staying at their parents' house until they're 40 or whatever. But they rent, and then they realize, well, hey, I could be putting my money towards something more important than rent. So they might buy a duplex or triplex, and they can house hack, or they live in a student house with other people or whatever it might be. And then they evolve over time. They learn how to do good renovations. They learn how to spot other opportunities. Maybe they get into conversions or land or those kinds of things. I've done a lot of burring in my time, but when you've done literally, like, I think I counted the other day, it's like we've cashed like 10,000 rent checks over the years. You want to apply your skills somewhere else. So we pivoted to doing some medium-term rentals when my 8-year-old was born 8 years ago. And I didn't really, Airbnb was around back then, but I didn't really want to have that daily turnover. I know as parents, we're always looking for the minimum effective dose. How can I be as profitable as possible with as little time as possible, because time is so valuable. Just like your quote in your onboarding documents talked about, you can always get more money, but you can't always get more time, right? So you got to be mindful of your time. I've done a lot of medium-term rentals and bought a storage facility this year. We got some raw land that we're going to be developing. But I think people really need to get good at the basics and the fundamentals before they start to go do all these other crazy strategies and do 5 things at once and not do any of them very well. Why don't you focus on 1 or 2 things, do them really well, and then you can always add something that's complementary to your repertoire as you go along.
Yeah, no, 100%. I think that's really good advice, especially in a world of a lot of messaging, right? A lot of messaging, a lot of different strategies. I actually have some folks who I know who will go to these events, all these types of events. And when they come back from the events, instead of feeling empowered, I think they almost feel confused because, you're going to these events where people are talking about, like you said, duplexing, about self-storage, about development, about short-term rentals. Oh, like there's this and this and this. There's so many different strategies that you can employ. But ultimately, like you said, I think there's sort of an importance in understanding that you just got to pick one thing, whatever it is. You got to just pick one thing, get really good at it, learn a lot about that one thing, and then you can start. And I think you're proof that you can diversify. Nobody's saying to be a one-trick pony your whole entire career. So tell us a little bit about that evolution. Like you said, you did a little bit of house hacking, and then what happened next?
And the house hacking came kind of naturally to me because I was working in a company where we were hiring and training university students to run their own painting franchise. I used to be the VP of operations for Eastern Canada for StudentWorks Painting. So great company. I still go back and speak to them. I'm an alumni, true and true forever. So I was okay with living like a student because I'd worked with so many of them. And back then there was no YouTube for this sort of stuff. Like I literally learned about renovations through my brother, who was a contractor. I mean, I saw my dad. My dad tried to do some things when I was younger. So I was exposed to it at a young age. And I took some shop and that kind of stuff in school, but literally I learned from Mike Holmes, like Homes on Homes, watching videos. I bought all of his DVD sets, and then just getting in there and doing easier renovations, like just surface level cosmetic. Let's rip out the floors, the sinks and the showers, and let's put it back together. Right. So, people can definitely evolve when they start a little bit easier. If someone goes into a full gut job, massive renovation, they're going to get over their head. They just don't know what they don't know. And it's a lot easier to get sideswiped, or just things come from the unknown, and it takes way longer because right now in real estate, you can still flip houses and stuff like that, but it's got to be fast. Like you got to be in and out before the market changes again. So that's my advice to people is, make sure you know what your strategic advantage is. Like, what do you bring to the table? Maybe you love tourism, right? So maybe you should get started with Airbnb or some kind of a furnished rental, or maybe you're a contractor. So for you to go and do a flip doesn't scare you at all, and you have the team members to just turn it around super fast, right? So make sure that you, like you said, when you go to an event, that's kind of like eating at the buffet. Like you can go and listen to everything, which would be like trying everything out, but you should know what your favorite foods are and what really lines up well with you, and become really good at that. I'd rather see people go like an inch wide but a mile deep, whereas so many people these days are trying to go a mile wide and only an inch deep. And, jack of all trades, master of nothing doesn't really get you too many places too fast. Right. So,
yeah. Yeah, no. And kind of leads me to my next question. Has there been a time where you've taken a loss on a property, or, things didn't go as well as you planned, and maybe some of the lessons you learned from that deal?
Yeah. Have I ever taken a loss on a property? I remember when I sold I haven't really lost too much, right? And I think it's important. Like, what's Warren Buffett's first message? Don't lose money. And what's the second one? Second lesson is look at number one. That's lesson number 2. So I've maybe sold too early. Like I remember I sold one of my first student rental properties, and I maximized this thing. It was like a 3-bedroom house, and we turned it into a 6-bedroom house and added an extra bathroom. And I took the property as far as I could at the time. And I was just getting a little bit tired of managing student rentals, and it was a little bit further away from campus. This is in London, Ontario. So I sold it. If I would have been patient and just held it for another year or two, literally the price would have doubled, right? But I don't think that was maybe a mistake or a loss, because I took that money and I still made a great return the same year with it, right? So I have maybe lost, like there's been the odd month where, you get a tenant who just does a midnight move or something like that. So keep the losses small or micro so that you can keep thriving at the game. Too often people have these bigger losses and they're very difficult to recover from. So I'm not trying to say play it safe, because you'll never get to second base if you have your foot on first base, right? But you got to make sure that you're making sound financial decisions. And if that means you need to surround yourself with people that have been there, done that, have some really good mentors in your corner, advisors. I always had people I could reach out to, so don't go through this journey alone, because these are big price tags, right? These are the biggest investments of your life. You don't want to just be trying to do that on your own or trying to figure it out on YouTube or, podcasts. Those are all great. They'll only get you so far, right? You can learn a ton from a great realtor, right? Like I think a great realtor can get you your first handful of properties as well, until you start to get a little bit more complicated, maybe corporate structure or things of that nature. And that's when you need to start, relying on your accounting and legal teams more. But yeah, I've been fortunate. Not that I play it safe all the time. I just find that I put a lot of thought into every move I make when it comes to real estate investing. I'm a very, mindful person. That's why I always get asked to do these talks on mindset, I guess, that, I don't just like fire, ready, aim. I'm always thoughtful before I pull the trigger on things. And I think that's important.
Yeah, for sure. So talk to us a little bit about your coaching. So for those of you who don't know, Kory is an extremely active coach and has a team as well that coaches real estate investors. So, coached hundreds of people in the industry. Talk to us a little bit about that, how that came to be, what your, passion is towards coaching and really what your vision is. Like, why do you do it? What is it that you want to accomplish through your coaching?
Definitely. And, there has been some heat on coaches recently when it's like, because I think whenever anybody is successful at something, even in an easy market, they're like, well, how else can I monetize this, right? Maybe I'll start a coaching program. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I think we need more bright lights in the world. We need more leaders in the world. And, if you're a beginner, don't go try to say that you know how to teach the most advanced thing in the room. But you can always be teaching somebody as long as you're 2 or 3 steps ahead of them, right? Like that's kind of like you're climbing a mountain, just put your hand back and help the other person up the mountain a little bit. So I've been a coach and a mentor for pretty much the majority of my life. I can still remember the first time I was ever asked by one of my friends' parents in grade 4, can you teach my and help to tutor my son in French of all topics, right? So because I thought, well, maybe it's a topic I'd be really good at, maybe it'd be science or math or something like that. But no, it was French. So and I don't speak any French right now. But so from then, I was a peer tutor in grade school, peer tutor in high school, peer tutor in college, and then I took a job. My corporate world was actually like teaching and mentoring people to go run businesses who'd never run businesses before. And then I did so well with real estate, I was able to retire at 36. And then when I retired, people just started reaching out like, hey, can you teach me how to do real estate? I'd like to be able to do what you did. Can you help make a roadmap for me? Can you give me some advice? So I started to put some things together. For the first year or two, it was really pretty unofficial because I was busy being a busy parent like you guys. I'm sure you know what it's like in the first year or two of having kids, like you're lucky to get sleep. But over time, I was like, there's enough social proof here. And I love consulting. I love helping people. So I just put something more formal together. I documented all my processes of how do you actually do different things. And, I basically started coaching people one-on-one. I went for the harder thing first, which was like one-on-one, consulting. And then we just started like a group training program about a year ago. So we launched it almost a year to the day. It's our Infinite Real Estate Accelerator program. And that's where we help people really work on the fundamentals. It's a 10 to 12 week course. They get 15 hours of recorded content with us, 15 hours of Q&A with us. So it's a great way to help a lot of people all at once, because I realized very quickly the one-to-one model only goes so far. You can only work with so many people one-to-one. And we need to have, and that's why I started a YouTube channel up last spring. And I've actually filmed some podcast episodes and things myself. So we kind of release them as YouTube episodes too. It's just a great way to impact more people, because There's so many people out there that need help and they're struggling, and the government's not helping us, school's not helping us all that much. They need people like you and I to help show them like how to get ahead in life, and how to have, whether it's a side hustle or some real estate or both. I mean, it's super important these days.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, you've coached through, several hundred students. What would you say are some of the top traits that has made those two students be very successful?
Great question. And this is something that we used to look for back in corporate as well. So I'll share it with your audience, and they can maybe do a mental checklist, like how many of these character traits checks the box for me right now. I'd say number one is going to be somebody who is willing to do the work. Okay. So you don't have to be the smartest person in the room. Frankly, sometimes the smartest person in the room has too big of an ego and they won't let new information come in. But are you willing to put in the work? Like, will you actually block and tackle out your calendar? Are you a person of your word? So when you say you're actually going to do something, do you follow through on it? That's one. Two would be, are you actually coachable? There's a lot of people out there that will say that they're coachable, but unless they've actually been in coaching situations before, I found, which a great one is sports. Like, I used to be a national level athlete. So I was just used to getting, constructive feedback. Sometimes it wasn't even constructive. It was just like, man, that sucked. Do it over again, kind of a thing. So you just take it as like, hey, we're just having a conversation. We're just talking this stuff through, and I'm taking it as reference points. I'm not taking it personally. So being coachable is important, because I'd rather have a bit of a wild horse. I can steer a wild horse, right? Because they got a lot of energy and they're willing to like put in the work, as opposed to someone who is not coachable and doesn't listen and doesn't do any work, right? So willing and coachable is important. And then number three is like, you got to be hungry. You got to be hungry and passionate about what you do. Some might even call that being obsessed, right? But being obsessed in a healthy way. Because when you're obsessed about things that you really like, it's not like it's draining on you, right? There's no friction there because you love doing it. So, I stay up late often. I get up early often. I speak on lots of stages. I want to be on podcasts, and this stuff doesn't feel like work because we're really just sharing a message that is so passionate to me. And maybe it was because I saw my parents struggle a little bit, right? I've seen other people where their parents didn't struggle. They don't really feel the need to share that kind of education, that kind of message with people of, get a property or two, don't rely on your pension, all those different messages, right? So those are some of the character traits that I would see. And I guess resilient would be another one, especially during the last couple of years. You've seen who has melted under the pressure, who has cracked under the pressure, right? Are they made of ice or snow? Or are they made of granite or steel? And, when you get more hardships, perhaps, whether they're big or small earlier in life, you put those in the bank, and you know how to deal with things when things are tough. Like during COVID, I just put my head down. I'm like, this is a great opportunity to work. There's no trips to go on anymore. I've always wanted to make a group training program or whatever it might be, or teach people virtually more on Zoom. So I'm just going to figure it out. I'm in my 40s. I'm not some millennial who's super tech savvy, but you figure it out. You get around the right people, and you keep showing up every single day. So those are my pieces of advice. That's what makes a person going to be successful, I find, in life.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And exactly what you said sounds like, so I've been reading this thing, and, it's the definition of grit, right? Perseverance plus passion equals grit. And it sounds exactly like that. Like, somebody who's just really gritty, who has all of those, traits that make them successful, which I think is a big part to play here. Talk to us a little bit about comfort, because I think, at least in my experience, and I'm not a coach, but people come to us and talk to us, and we find that comfort is a big hindrance. Even when I will tell people like, hey, like, you got to come back from work and you got to do this, like, you got to grind, like, for the first while. I mean, there's no other word for it, right? Yeah. You got to grind. And it's like, yeah, but like, I don't really feel like that. Like, I don't really feel like that's something I want to do. Like, why would I give up my life to just like grind? And like, I actually get this response from people yes. who are in corporate jobs where they're making, quote unquote, good livings. They don't have any sort of discomfort with their day-to-day lifestyle. How do you overcome that and motivate people to, or is it just the people you're coaching already have that?
Well, fortunately, a lot of them already have that, but some of them, we have to do things or give them some exercises or environments where they do have opportunities to get some of that feeling, right? And it's, it kind of takes a generation. Like, I remember when I was young, like, it wasn't like you didn't want to carry a balance on your credit card. I know my kids were asking me today, they're like, Daddy, why don't we take the bus or anything like that? I'm like, we could, but it takes longer, and they've made it so easy to get a car. Like when I was young, 30 years ago, 35 years ago, I think you'd be looked at really down upon if you needed a car loan. Like, oh, you go get a used car, you save up some money until you have enough money for a used car. And then if you have more money, maybe you could buy a new car or a newer car or whatever it might be. So, and I think, obviously the government and credit cards and debt have made it very easy for people to stay comfortable, and we're kind of in this like have it now kind of economy, right? You want to book a trip? Great. You just go online, book a trip. You can literally just go jump on a plane tonight or tomorrow if you really want to, right? So I think they need to get used to doing hard things and going, that's an opportunity for me to grow. Go do some challenges. Maybe it's a physical challenge, right? I find that when people can engage themselves physically and they get used to doing something like, I'll probably end up going for a run later today, right? It's for Canada, it's 8 degrees where I'm at, this has been like the mildest winter ever. For some people, they need to do something like the 75 hard challenge. For other people, it's like we have other challenges in our program, like make 100 phone calls over the course of 2 to 4 weeks, right? Anybody that touches real estate, it doesn't have to be realtors, because if you call 100 realtors, you're just tying up a whole bunch of realtors' time. But it could be the contractors, could be the junk collectors, could be property managers. Like just go and get used to the people that make things happen in your city and get uncomfortable. Like get used to being uncomfortable on something as small as a phone call. Or make a story on your social media. You might feel uncomfortable about that. But over time, it's like you've taken this weak muscle, now you've made it stronger to the point where I actually want to be uncomfortable. I want variety. I want, just things to like challenges to present themselves, because that's how I really thrive, right? I'm not trying to make my life more difficult than it needs to be. But, like Tony Robbins, I did his inner circle for a year. For the past 15 or 20 years, Tony does a cold plunge every single morning. He's been doing that for a long, long time. Now you see people doing ice baths and all these things because it's like the thing to do. It's like, I've sat in ice baths like 20 years ago when your legs were so sore from doing squats that was the only thing that would give you some relief, right? So I think it's great that some of these things are being adopted right now, but I think the couches get pretty comfortable. People don't go outside as much. People just don't do as much. People don't even socialize as much, So you got to put yourself in the right environment, right? There's 3 things that'll help get you what you want in life. It's typically your mindset, your skill set, and your environment. So if you can get yourself in the right environment, change your mindset, and then work on your skill set, if you can do all 3 of those things, but sometimes it might just start with the right environment. Get around other people that are doing hard things too, so that you're like, okay, I guess we're all doing this sort of thing. Maybe that's a training partner. Maybe that's an accountability partner. But yeah, I mean, this is the kind of stuff that fires me up. Like you will not get what you want in life living in comfort. Like comfort zones are meant for like extreme recovery or if you're sick or something like that. But all growth in life is done through being uncomfortable, by pushing the envelope, reaching for the next level, stretching, whatever you need to do, doing counterintuitive things. It's not by being comfortable by any means.
Yeah. But it's funny. Like, it's so funny when you talk to people, it's like, why would you do that to yourself? Like that's, why would I've had people tell me too, like, I would never want to be you. Like, why would I want to put myself through that? Like, with some of the struggles of being an entrepreneur and having property management issues and tenants and, like there is struggles. There's no doubt there's struggles, but it's very interesting to me. The dialogue that I hear a lot of times is very resistant to that. And very much so like, I'm happy with my life. Like, I'm cool with this. Like, I'm cool with going to work every day. I like my job. Like, it's very interesting to me. And they
almost talk themselves out of it.
It's almost like talking yourselves down.
They're hypnotized, right? They're in like self-hypnosis. And what's the dream job in Canada, right? It's to work for the government. My wife works at the high school just down the road, and that's what she really loves to do. I could have retired her a long time ago, but I know that I have that future vision. I'm not living a delusionary life. I know that things are going to cost way more in the future. And I want to have way more extra money in the bank and have assets that are going to be able to let us continue to live the lifestyle that we have right now. And we want to have an even better lifestyle in the future. So we always practice some form of delayed gratification. My next big bucket list is to be able to fly private more often, or to have my own plane, right? So, we don't have to deal with delays and everything else at the airport, or telling you who can fly and when you can't fly. But I think if people actually put some more thought into it, did some more research on what the value of our dollar is actually going to be able to purchase, like the diminished purchasing power in the future, maybe they would get more fired up to work a little bit harder, and they don't have to work as hard as us. Like we're kind of extreme examples here. But I think what's wrong with like having something a little bit extra, like something that you do. Like when I was young, my mom used to cut hair, even though she was busy with the kids. She used to be a hairdresser, but she would still bring people over. They cut my dad's friend's hair and things like that. All of our cousins, all the people on the street would go to my mom's place and get their hair cut, right? So it doesn't hurt to have a side hustle, especially if it's something that you really enjoy. And maybe people just don't realize that they could actually monetize some of their hobbies and passions and things. And maybe they don't want to do all the active work, but I think it's important that they at least know how to maybe invest passively in real estate, right? Maybe they just go buy something that's super turnkey. It doesn't require any work. You'll be very happy that you bought that investment 5 or 10 years down the road when you can refinance it, or if you ever did have to sell it, or when you're hand it down to your kids or something like that, right? So there's so many different ways to get to that end result. So many people are just thinking my job's going to get me there, which is not the case, as you guys know, right? I know you guys, yeah. I'm preaching to the choir right now, but
yeah, I mean, what's happening in today's economy with, the government and inflation and all the money printing, and some people may find this as an excuse that, hey, like interest rates are too high, or this and that. They give themselves an excuse. What do you think are some of the things that people should be paying attention to right now, which they aren't, especially when it comes to real estate investing?
Yes, a lot of people, they'll go on the MLS and they'll just take a quick first glance at the properties out there and go, oh, none of these work, right? Because most people know how to do napkin math, right? Like you look at the potential income or the rents that somebody would pay, market value rent on that property, and then what are the expenses, and they do the math, and like that doesn't really work. But what they're not doing is they're not asking themselves, how could this work, right? You got to be, I do believe in more challenging times, or in most markets, like when I first started doing real estate, it was a grind. Like things weren't going up very quickly. It was like 1 or 2% appreciation a year. So we had to be a little bit more creative. We were always going, okay, how could it work? How could this be a deal? What strategy might I need to do? It's interesting. Like if you go on, realtor.ca, there's a lot more people that are willing to give the buyers a vendor take back these days, right? You can just go in the search bar and just type in VTB. You'll see all the ones in Ontario that are willing to do a VTB with you. Whereas in the past, that was like very minimal. You might see a dozen for the whole province. Now you're seeing hundreds. So I think if people ask themselves, how could this still be a deal? What creativity would need to happen for this to work? And like our students are still finding deals. And if it's a deal now, man, it's going to be such a great deal in the next year or two once rates come back down. They'll maybe never go back down to where they were, but when there's a 4 on there, or maybe even a 3 on the interest rates, I mean, they're going to be laughing and they're going to be glad that they did do it. So I think they just need to be a little bit more creative and just look at things through different lenses. But if you're only using one pair of glasses, it's going to be a no, and then they're just going to sit and wait, which, the world moves ahead every single day. So when you sit and do nothing, you actually fall behind because the world's always moving. Other people are always moving forward. You're not, so you're falling behind.
For sure. So Kory, tell us a little bit about your own real estate investing, and what are you currently investing in? What areas are you investing in? And what is sort of your strategy for, I'd say, 2023 coming?
Oh, great question. So, I mean, I've been building my portfolio, steadily over the years. Some years I would buy, 5, 6, 7. Some years I'd only buy 1. I don't think there's really been any years where I haven't bought anything. So, and I guess I didn't just follow the herd during COVID. Like a lot of people are just financing everything out to the max. And that's great if you financed everything to the max and then you locked in at a low rate on a fixed term. But I've always been a variable kind of a person. So, I've just always picked strategies where I'm still fine. I'm still cash flowing really well because I've diversified a little bit, and 15% of my portfolio is medium-term rentals. And I've been screaming from the rooftops for like the last 3 years, like go for the higher yielding strategies before you actually need them. Because now a lot of people are like, oh, I need I need to start an Airbnb, or I need to do something like that because a regular rental, like my regular rental, is losing money. Why don't you do it before you even need it? Because when you actually need it, it's kind of too late. So right now, like I'm getting really interested in just some higher level projects, right? Like we have 10 acres near the water here in Sarnia that we're going to develop. I've always been a value city kind of a person. You can make money in real estate in any city. The strategies are just going to look a little bit different. So I've always looked for those value markets because I grew up in a value market. Sarnia, Ontario, 70,000 people. It's like St. Thomas, the St. Thomases of the world. London's still pretty affordable right now. Certain cities are a little bit more expensive. Some people are going a little bit further up to the north. Some people are going to the East Coast. Some people are going to the West Coast. Some people are going to Alberta. So there's deals all across Canada. I've always been more of a value kind of a city person and a cash flow investor. And then once you get really good at that, to the point where I've got someone else who manages all my doors. We've got about 100 doors. And then we've got a bunch more when you add all the storage doors too. Then you can go, okay, I learned how to do good renovations through burring. Maybe I'll go and do some development or like a quick flip, or do something bigger. Like we've also got a church that we wanted to actually get this started right at the beginning of COVID. We bought a 12,000 square foot church that we could put a bunch of apartments in and build an addition and turn it into 29 units and a 20,000 square foot building. So it was a little bit too expensive and a little bit too challenging during COVID with supply chain to get that one going, but I'm looking forward to getting it going here in the next year. So we're going to recost it and just pull the trigger, get it going, because that'll be a great project once that's done.
That's pretty cool.
Amazing. Yeah. No, I mean, I don't know anybody in Ontario that has done self-storage. So tell us about how you came across that deal and how's it working out so far?
Yeah, I mean, I've been very interested in self-storage for, probably ever since I had to use some self-storage. Like when we bought our first home as a husband and wife back in 2009. And I remember that was in Komoka. So Komoka is just outside of London, Ontario. And they had built a storage facility a couple of years before. And I remember calling them, they're like, we're very full, but if you can wait a week, I think someone's giving up their unit and you'll be able to get in. I was like, wow, this is like, there's no supply. Like this must be really good, right? They picked the right area, a booming city to go build a storage facility on. And from them, that kind of turned on a part of my brain that, this is definitely a thing. And obviously like storage wars on TV and all that sort of stuff over the years just goes to show like people are becoming more and more materialistic. And as the cost to build homes increases, right, the cost per square foot, people are going to get into smaller homes. So that means they're going to need like an extra garage somewhere. And their garage could be my storage facility or someone else's storage facility. But there's definitely math behind it. Like you need to make sure that the city is not overbuilt when it comes to storage facilities. And I can put you guys in touch with some great storage people if you want to talk to them too. But to me, it's kind of like you're not taking phone calls about the toilets running or,
I love this. That's why
so-and-so is
I'm
too noisy or they're fighting or parking issues or whatever. It still is fairly active. Like someone's got to be answering the phones, but it is kind of cool and it's fairly recession resilient. People still need a place to store their stuff for sure. And during COVID, if you could actually find a storage facility, you had a big advantage because the cost to build and the wait time to build were further out there. So this was brought to us just through actually one of my students. She'd been in touch with a realtor and he's like, hey, I know you're looking for a multifamily, but would you ever consider storage? And the deal was a little bit too big for her to take down. So she referred it to me. I paid her a finder's fee. We took it down and she might get involved in the future on future expansion or a future deal. But some of the best deals, as you know, come through word of mouth. This one never hit the market. Yeah. So, and a lot of my deals are kind of that way too. I'd rather find them off market because then there's no competition and you can be a little bit more creative with the owners at that point.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's wonderful. Yeah. That's super cool.
No, I love, I've been kind of learning a little bit more about self-storage and it's a brilliant business model, especially I don't know too many people that are in the space, especially in Canada.
In Canada, yeah.
It's brilliant.
Well, there's a lot of bigger owners, right? So you get the bigger U-Haul type companies that own a lot of the inventory, but there's not as many mom and pop type shops, but they're out there and there's some realtors that sell this stuff exclusively. And there's some people that just like to be in the space. And I think every year there's a national Canadian storage convention, which is kind of cool too. So
that's pretty cool. Yeah.
Look into that.
Yeah, for sure. So I think we're kind of at our time here. I'm sure we could talk more, but we just wanted to thank you for coming on the show and for sharing. If people want to get in touch, we'll put it in our show notes as well, but maybe you could just give us a quick rundown of the best way to follow you or to contact you if anybody's interested in, coaching or having any other questions for you.
Sure. Yeah. I'm pretty easy to find. People can go to my website. It's just korymckinnon.com. That's where they can fill out a form and we can have like a strategic map session, we can actually map out where are you right now, where do you want to be, and how can you get there in today's economy. Instagram is great because I post on there like 5 days a week. Also have a YouTube channel, so if people are listening to this, go give us a subscribe. We're really close to 1,000 followers, and some of the videos are getting great traction there too. Facebook as well, but yeah, basically just Google my name, you'll be able to find ways to find me, and happy to help people that are newer, intermediate, or more advanced. We have things for everybody. So
absolutely. No, that's awesome. So
That's
we'll
amazing.
definitely link it in our show notes. And yeah, before we close off for the day, did you have like a quote or a saying that really resonates with you, or that you embody in your life or your business that you'd love to share?
Sure. My message for people is that we always have another level. We always have something that we could be reaching for. And I think one of the saddest things would be if you ever got to meet your maker and they show you the person that you could have been, and you weren't putting in the effort and always be stretching and trying to go to the next level to become that person. That would be a shame, right? So that's my message to people. We always have another level. And I know you guys, your message is like, what is the definition of wealth? So I think in 2023, the definition of wealth is like an abundant mindset and attitude when it comes to things. Like don't play small. Don't try to contract. Like you need to be abundant and be ready to expand and have that confidence that, if other people are still growing themselves and their portfolios, then I can too, right? You might just need to get, go find that person or go find that room, or, be on the right podcast where you can get those kinds of messages. Cause it's, you don't want to lose time. You don't want to look back and go, wow, I didn't do anything for 3-4 years because I was worried, right? I was worried about, no, you just didn't have the right playbook. So yeah, be abundant and don't be afraid to expand.
Yeah, great message. So thanks again, Kory. Really appreciate your time and your message. Yeah, thanks again.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys, for having me. It's been awesome.